Well, some would say for every high, there must be a low. And here in the high country, that's very much the case. Today we're going to explore some of the most beautiful valleys that this area has to offer, before taking you up to probably one of the best views that this country has to offer. Come on, be a part of the Camper Trailer lifestyle. On this week's episode, I'm joined by Tim and Adrian from Lumberjack, and this week they have the Glenair back on the mighty Ranger. You might have noticed this range is looking a whole lot tougher than it did when it was in the Flinders. The boys have set it up for the high country and it is eating it up, just like the Glenair. This week, Peter from Camper Act has given up the T-van for the Riches family. Both Andrew and Christine are super excited to have the T-van in tow, especially considering the temperatures overnight this time of year. Having the hard shell body is going to be handy. This week we're joined by Tamara from Easy Trail, and she's brought her daughter Shakira, along with one of Easy Trail's lightest campers, the Albany Z. This trailer is bang on designed for this type of terrain. Lots of clearance, lots of off-road features, and a price tag that anyone can afford. Finally, once again, I'm riding shotgun with my good mate Tim Bates. He's a man who knows pretty much everything there is to know about the high country and a little bit more. And to boot, he's a good bloke to travel with. Our adventure this week kicks off at a pretty stunning little campsite just a few kilometres from the little town of Dargo. It's called Jimmy Iverson's and it's a spot right on the banks of the Dargo River. There are a number of great camp spots like this along the Dargo River, and it's easy to see why at Christmas time up here, it's hard to find a spot big enough to swing a tent pole. It might be a bit chilly this time of year, but nothing a warm campfire and a hot coffee doesn't fix. Before long though, it's time to pack up, hitch up and head into town. Dargo's a great little town, and I'd even risk saying it's the beating heart of the high country. There's the iconic Dargo Hotel where you can spend an afternoon or evening with a few cold ones out of the cold. They also serve up a mean Palmer for lunch and dinner that most blokes would struggle to finish. Or the general store where you can pick up those last supplies that you really need and get a splash of fuel for the next stage of your adventure. I would suggest though that you take your time in a town like this one. Speak to the locals, have a coffee and a chat, as these guys know the high country year round. And a condition update up here might save you getting stuck later in the day.
I haven't been for probably 3 years, walked in yesterday and the lady at the bistro goes, "Hello, back again, are you?"
That's a face you wouldn't forget, though, I reckon.
Yeah, true story, I suppose.
Our destination today is a spot called Talbotville, and even the drive in along the dirt is pretty special.
So we've just hit the dirt and we're heading off into the Victorian high country. It's my first time here, so I'm really excited to see what it's got to offer. Already just from looking around, the views are absolutely spectacular.
Making our way to the Wonnangatta River in the Ranger from Lumberjack now. It's had a bit of gear done to it recently, so I'll try not and break it.
Well, how's everyone enjoyed that for a drive this morning down through the valley along the Wonnangatta, and we'll turn off shortly and get onto the Crooked River track. Get a few river crossings under our belt this morning, eh? What do you reckon?
Yeah, sounds good. Didn't quite have time to put a snorkel on the Ranger, so hopefully they're not too deep, but I'm sure we're in capable hands and we'll get through it eventually.
Oh, river crossings in the high country. I was more expecting mountains, so this has got me. This has got my blood pumping.
Yeah, clear all the dust off the vehicle for a change. That'd be good.
We haven't had a great deal of rain over here sort of in the last month or so, but the first two crossings we're going to do this morning can be renowned to be a little bit deepish sometimes, so we'll get along and see what they're like when we get there, eh?
It wasn't long before we reached the first crossing, and it was time to take a little bit of a look. Well, this is our first crossing of the Crooked River today, and a good practice if you're not used to the crossing or it looks a little bit different from the last time you went there is to walk it first. And as with everything in the bush, there's a bit of etiquette involved. You've got to choose who in your group is going to make that walk, and today we're using that etiquette. The youngest man's going to get cold. Patesy and I are up first, and it's best with this type of crossing to keep a steady throttle and push your way through. It's not overly deep, but could be a problem if you just had a standard four-wheel drive.
If we get through.
Oh, I think we'll be all right, my dear.
Andrew's handed the reins over to Christine for her very first river crossing.
It's my first river crossing. Woo!
Go, mummy.
Woo! It's pretty
Off you
deep.
go. Give it some berries. Give it some berries. Yeah, that's it.
Woo!
Later in the show, we keep tracking along the Crooked River on the way to a pretty little camp in Talbotville before tackling the Brewery Creek track and the infamous Blue Rag track. Welcome back to the Victorian High Country. This place is pretty special. Today we're on our way along the Crooked River track, heading for a camp in Talbotville. There are 7 separate crossings on this section of track, and every one of them is a little bit of fun.
Always stop before the water crossing and let your engine and your diffs cool down.
So what's your hot tip, Batesy? Water crossings in the high country. Anything special?
Well, certainly have a good look as we've already done. Get someone to have a walk across it, make sure there's no snags in that in the middle. And when you get to the other side, it's a good idea. Stop before you exit out of the river crossing. Just so you don't drag all that water that's in your vehicle up the crossing. Just makes it a bit easier. Yeah. If the vehicles come behind you, just to get up as well.
Yeah, you're right, because these exits, sometimes your first vehicle through, it's nice and dry, you don't have a drama.
No, spot on.
Try and leave it that way for everyone else, because otherwise by the time the last old mate comes through, he's working his backside off.
Yeah, generally pretty slippery. All that does is just erode the tracks. That's not what we want.
There's also a few tight spots on this track that make things a little bit interesting when you're towing, especially with a larger camper like the Glenair. Tim is a top driver though, so he handles this little section with ease. Talbotville's one of those very popular campsites here in the high country, and it's easy to see why. Big open grassy spaces along with plenty of river frontage means everyone gets their own little piece of paradise. Talbotville sprung up in the early 1860s when gold was found here on the Crooked River. By 1865, Talbotville boasted a butcher shop, bakery, blacksmiths, 3 stores, doctor, chemist, newsagents, brewery, post office, racecourse and 3 licensed hotels. It wasn't long before we found ourselves a spot and the Richards family was setting up the T-Van. The T-Van is one of those campers that just screams experience. Not only has the T-Van been around for years, it's been taken through pretty much every desert, beach and mountain in the country. And all those Ks and all those nights camping has made this trailer just so versatile. Tamara's working on the Albany with the help of the Lumberjack boys, and Tim's once again on fire duty. Where am I? Well, that's easy. I'm looking for the fridge and keeping the crew hydrated. Once the camp's set up, it's time to sit back and relax. I love this time of day.
What a beautiful campsite. This is what it's all about. This is the camper trailer lifestyle.
We all love a fire at night, but I'll tell you what, if you visit the high country in July like we are, you are gonna love that fire in the morning too. Many people think the high country is only a place for those who want to winch up steep hills or drive slippery tracks. You couldn't be further from the truth. It just comes down to research and knowing where to drive. We're going to make our way to a pretty amazing campsite called Mount Freezeout. Sounds inviting, doesn't it? We're following a track called the Brewery Creek track, and I tell you what, the views are simply stunning.
So we're driving up these ranges and oh my goodness, look at these views. They're absolutely amazing. One thing you do need to keep in mind though is as much as these are beautiful, we've got some very narrow tracks here, so you've got to make sure that you're keeping your eye on the road at all times. Again, we're hugging the walls again. We've got the camper on the back, so it's very important to be vigilant, especially with these switchbacks that you've got here on these tracks.
The high country's got a few places that I reckon you simply can't miss when you travel out this way. The first would be Dargo and the old pub there, but the second I reckon would be Blue Rag Track. Now this one you've seen in all the magazines. It's a great drive, but it isn't for camper trailers. So with that in mind, we've dropped the campers off at Mount Freezeout and decided to tackle this track and see if we can't take in a high country sunset. The Blue Rag track is a true low-range track, and you'll need to be a confident driver for this one. There are both steep climbs and steep descents to deal with, so it pays to know not just your vehicle's abilities, but yours as well.
Just coming up to one of the rises on the Blue Rag Range track, one thing I like to do is just wait down the bottom, wait until the car in front of you has reached the crest of the hill before you attempt. We're coming up to one now. I've just waited for the red D-Max to get to the top, and now I'm in second gear low. I'm just going to get just a healthy amount of momentum, nothing too ridiculous, and just make our way to the top.
This is a stunning time of day to do this drive, and as you get higher, the view starts to open up, and we get to see the high country in all its wonder.
Yeah, look, this is certainly one of the iconic tracks to drive up in this area here, and when you get a morning like what we've got, beautiful blue skies, stunning views, and particularly if you guys haven't been down here before, fantastic to come and see it as it is like it is today.
Going up, Blue Rag. We're in the clouds.
The final climb to the trig point is steep and can be slippery, especially if the weather changes, and it can change in an instant. As we climb the final 100 feet of this drive, we're greeted by a cold front sweeping through. But it's not going to put a damper on our spirits because it's Andrew's birthday, and what better place to spend it than with mates at the top of the high country.
Well, here we are, Blue Rag Trig Point, probably the holy grail of the high country. And it's the place where everyone wants to come, get their photo taken. We have timed it absolutely perfectly this afternoon because the sun is setting in the west as we speak. A little bit of fog around it, but there's nothing wrong with that. We're going to soak that up and then head back to camp.
It's been a good trip, from water crossings on the Crooked River to the stunning views from the Blue Rag Range track. It's perfect for your family to come and experience next school holidays, but a word of warning. If you do decide to come late in the season, just before winter, make sure you collect plenty of wood for a big fire. You are gonna need it.
Well, I, for one, cannot think of a better way to spend a mate's birthday than exploring some of the most beautiful tracks that Australia has to offer. And then, topping it off, sitting around the fire, sharing a meal and good company right up here in the Victorian High Country. Why don't you consider doing it next time it's one of your mates' birthdays and be a part of the Camper Trailer lifestyle?
Next week on the show, we head north towards the New South Wales-Victoria border to explore a part of the high country that's often forgotten, the home of the iconic Man from Snowy River. This one is gonna be a cracker.